What is up, YouTube? This is Brandon Talks Movies, or aka Brandon at the Movies. Here, bringing guys another review for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. I just uploaded my Texas Chainsaw 3D review. I'll put it in the link down below in the description. I'll put out. I'm gonna start putting out more of my things you can follow me at if you want. Don't have to, but it's there if you're interested and whatnot. But we're talking about, so I'm not going in chronological order. I'm going by more of the ones I want to kind of talk about, just to a degree. And this one is Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation, which I think most would say this is the worst of the franchise. Now, I did watch a review yesterday, which actually thought this was a pretty good entry, while it's stupid. So my first time watching this was getting this Blu-ray. So I wanted to get it because, for one, I have all the movies in physical media. Yes, that does include the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's not an official release. Unfortunately, it is a mod or a import or something like of that sort. So keep that in mind with that. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation is written and directed by Kim Henkel, who is the original writer of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, there was something I remember reading something. I don't know I forget how accurate it was, but according to him, this was the true direct sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And while I respect him in thinking that this was that, what he was trying to do here, I disagree. I don't think this is anywhere near what that original film was. And I'm going to try to be not as, honestly, this is not, for me, this is the worst of the franchise. And just because it's just so, because of, just remembering, reading those comments, saying that this was the true direct sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, I hugely disagree. There might be elements to where you could see that, especially in the terms of Leatherface and how his personality, in terms of he feels like a child, which that was in the original film, but he still had an intimidation with him in that film. But we'll get to that. This also is well known for starring Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, and at the time when this was being released, they released it as the return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they released it early or whatnot, and they decided to take it out. It didn't do well. They decided to recut it, and retitle it, called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. And then they were trying to bill it when Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard the story, but apparently they told the studio of the film at the time, if you do this, we're gonna sue, kind of thing like that. So they didn't put their names on the poster or anything like that. So you got a kind of a let me see if it has the original artwork. So yeah, it has the original artwork right here. This is the original artwork for it. I believe that's what they were selling for The Next Generation. And so it's about these teenagers coming from prom, and they stumble into the middle of the woods, and they get, shit starts to go down, and it's just, so the positives of this film is, I highly recommend, if you check this movie out, you're watching it for Matthew McConaughey's over-the-top, crazy-ass performance. He is so good in this film. It is crazy how good he is, actually. Now, some might say it's over-the-top bad, but it's in a good way. I do think he's actually giving a damn good performance. I think he's putting it all out there. He's showing his range. Because everyone knows him for All Right. And everyone knows him for the rom-coms. But this is something really... I would like to see more would like to see Matthew McConaughey do more horror. I think that would be really interesting for him to do. But obviously, and I don't know how much he truly hates this film, but I get at the time, when you're starting to build up your cred and you're starting to get your name out there, I don't think you wanted this attached. No matter how good your performance was, it's still going to be this was not a good movie, and it really is not a good movie. Now, where they want to talk about Texas Chainsaw 3D, where that fails, what this fails is in any kind of scares, and it's just unfortunate because I think there's potential in this, especially when you have the original writer who's writing and directing this film, and it's just frustrating to watch because you also have Leatherface in this film who has three different, you know, is dresses three different times, and you get a different kind of personality with that, and he's not intimidating in this film. And I'm not even going to, I just don't think there was anything interesting about Leatherface in this film. He's not the one that's scary in this film. It is Matthew McConaughey's character. He's a scary one. Renee Zellweger, I think she's pretty solid as the final girl in this movie. I think she's the only other outside of Matthew McConaughey are the only two characters you actually are even interested in. Now there's another actress. I think it was I wouldn't even. She was in Varsity Blues. I know everyone talks about any review they mention her. So the villains outside of Leatherface are probably the more interesting characters, especially when they get to this subplot where you realize they're part of the Illuminati. Yeah, it goes into what gets into really weird shit. Like, this movie just goes for it, and that's another thing I will appreciate, that it goes for it. And when you're doing a movie like this, even if it doesn't turn out good, and this is considered the worst of the franchise, and I do consider it the worst, but that doesn't mean necessarily it has to be a bad thing, but it's just, the reason why for me it's bad, it's not scary or intense like those originals. And the Leatherface thing, while that's frustrating because he's not scary or even interesting, because they don't give Robert Jacks anything to do. They give him different looks, which is, again, you're going for it, but you need to give Leatherface something else than just screaming. But again, I get the child aspect, that he's still a child in a grown adult body. So I do appreciate that, bringing that from the original film with that. But I just don't think they gave him enough to be a force to a degree. He doesn't have to. And again, it's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's the one with the chainsaw, so that's what you kind of expect. But again, I'm not going to completely hate on it, but it is one of the weakest elements. But again, the other weak element outside of Leatherface, in terms of his intimidation, the scary factor, like he doesn't feel like Leatherface is really, he's there. Is the teenage characters? Oh my God! Even Renee. Why I will give Renee Zellweger's character a break is because she is likable enough, and you feel for of the characters she's with, but the other characters are just dumb, idiotic, and just like frustrating. You do not want to listen to them. So in a way, when you get Valmer, I think it's his name, played by Matthew McConaughey, then that's where it gets interesting, and you're really you're interested in where it goes. But it's just such a mess because the characters are especially the teenage characters are just so not good. Outside of Renee Zellweger, and again, I'm probably giving her more of a break than maybe I should, but I think you have to find, to me, I want to try to find at least a single positive with those characters, because when you're watching this movie, in most of these, you're trying to follow the protagonist. And of all the protagonists of these films, these are the worst. And it's just, again, where it's going on to this weird, bizarre stuff with the Illuminati, and just, and it's just, and I just don't know. Again, the big positives I would say about this is that it's wild. It goes for trying to do something different. It definitely goes for that. Matthew McConaughey is the biggest aspect of this film to watch, honestly. And Renee Zellweger, you could definitely tell where they were going in their careers. For sure, you definitely saw something there with him in this film, at the very least. But outside of that, this movie's just like, again, what hurts this film in the end, um, it is the writing of these characters. They're just not good. You know, especially again, like I said, the teenage characters. They're just not good. They're not interesting. They're so unlikable. They're they're written to be stupid, and it's frustrating. Now, I'm not saying the characters in the original film were that amazing, obviously, because that movie just feels like a raw intensity, just you know, gross in the way it looks, the way it's filmed, and just it's there. But there's something powerful about that in that way, because it's not meant to be kind of this, you know, teenage ride or this like where you're supposed to have fun. This is trying to have that element where you're supposed to kind of have fun, and there's no fun to be had because the characters you don't like. Again, the villain characters are the most interesting aspect of this film, and the really only one of the villains that I'm interested is Matthew McConaughey, and that's disappointing because I also come to watch Leatherface, and I just don't think he was really well used in this movie, you know, and I think that's the big character writing of the characters and Leatherface, which I guess you can say is part of the writing of his character as well. Just not good, in my opinion. Again, if you like this, I'm glad you guys find enjoyment in this. I just, you know, and I do have the movie. Again, I bought it to watch it for the first time. So, and look, the slipcover is pretty cool. You know, it's originally the artwork for the Scream Factory was supposed to have Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, but yeah, they didn't want him on there, obviously. So, again, just overall, I think if you're curious of this film, curious about it, it is definitely wild. It's definitely it's trying something different, but I just don't think it works. I hate putting anything in the worst character unless it's really that bad. What would I don't know where I would rank this in like the worst of the horror icons. That's tough. Because I don't want to. This is probably the weakest of the icons in my opinion. It's either this or Freddy's Dead for me as the worst of the icons, because that movie just turns Freddy into like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and those characters are not interesting. Those are boring. So again, but they're different. I mean, because there's expectations, I think, that makes Freddy the Nightmare one a lot worse than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, because I don't think there was an expectation for this. I don't know if there was that hype that, you know, you had one last go at Freddy. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on the film. Overall, this is probably a 1.5 out of 5. This is, again, there's there's good things and again, good performances from Renee and Matthew. There's some, you know, atmosphere wise, I like the way the house looks and stuff like that. It still has that kind of, inside the house, it still kind of has that weird gross factor. And I think the third act is probably where the movie really gets going and just goes crazy. But again, the biggest detriment to this film is the writing of all these characters, especially Leatherface and the teenage characters. Nothing interesting about them. The one thing they did well with the Leatherface, again, is he still feels like a child in an adult body. So when he's whining and stuff like that, it makes sense. And it feels like that Kim Hinkle took that from the original, which I do really appreciate that. But overall, yeah, this one is definitely the bottom of the barrel, at least for me, in my opinion. And I think I do see a lot of that argument, but I think there's also people who do. There are people that do defend this film, and I'm not gonna shit on them for it. But for me, it just didn't work for me, and it's too bad, because you do get some really good performance. You get a really damn good performance from Matthew McConaughey. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation. This is Brandon at the Movies, or Brandon, aka Brandon Talks Movies, signing off. Peace.